Please.
Good morning to all, Professor Chauhan and all our participants. Welcome to our webinar of Law School IILM University. Agencies of justice are required to prevent and punish the behaviors forbidden by law by apprehending and punishing transgressors so as to deter their future occurrence. Oh, right. Criminal justice system in India must ensure that the law and order is maintained in the country. All three stages, namely investigation, inquiry, and trial, criminal justice system must function with best efficiency and at all times. In this process, courts have the most important role to play. Courts must not only adjudicate disputes between parties, but also protect the rights and liberty of individuals. This is especially important in criminal matters, where an individual is pitted against the might of the state. COVID-19 has brought almost the entire world to a near standstill, and India's justice delivery system, rarely known for its speed even in the best of times, is no different. Official data shows that while the institution of new cases, both in the higher judiciary and subordinate judiciary, has come down substantially since the beginning of the nationwide lockdown on 25th March, the disposal rate has also been severely affected due to closure of courts during the lockdown. All courts, including the Supreme Court, High Courts, and District Courts, have been operating in a highly restricted manner. The most affected have been cases of domestic violence and sexual violence, which cannot wait. In this backdrop, an assessment of criminal justice delivery system will definitely throw some light on future course action for proper and speedy criminal justice. Today, we have with us Professor Balraj Chauhan to enlighten us on the issue. Professor Chauhan is the first Vice Chancellor of Dharmashastra National University, Jabalpur. Before joining Dharmashastra University, National Law University, Professor Chauhan has served as Director, MET Law School, Lucknow. He has been the Vice Chancellor of Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia National Law University, Lucknow, and National Law Institute University, Bhopal. He is also the convener of CLAT 2020, which is a consortium of National Law University. He has also been a member of UP State Law Commission, member of UP State Legal Services Authority, and executive member of Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute, New Delhi. Professor Chauhan is criminology and clinical legal education. Professor Chauhan is the president of Indian Society of Criminology. He is a distinguished scholar and was awarded Dr. Kumar Rappa Reckless Award in 2009 for contributing to the field of criminology. Over to Professor Chauhan now. Let's hear from him. Sir, you will need to unmute.
Okay, I'm audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for very nice and impressive introduction. Warm greeting from Dharamshastra National Law University. Warm greeting from Indian Society of Criminology. I welcome all the participants, particularly my friend from Indian Society of Criminology, Chairperson Madhavan, Secretary Dr. Umar, my friend Dr. G.S. Bajpai, Registrar, National Law University, Delhi, my faculty from here, and faculty members of the IILM University, students of the IILM University, my friend Lieutenant General P.N. Sharma from MIT Law School, Gurgaon. So all the friends who are here, and especially I bow before my teacher, Professor B.V. Pandey, who might be joining us or who might be, because I will tell about a conversation which I had with him yesterday. So I welcome you all to this webinar. And as Dr. Sharma initiated, because the topic of the webinar is challenges of a crime control in a society under lockdown. So before I come to the topic, I think it becomes important for me to just discuss about this lockdown. I think a 55-year-old individual from Hubei province in China may have been the first person to have contracted COVID-19, the disease caused by the new coronavirus spreading across the globe. That case dates back to November 17, according to the South Morning China Post. A pneumonia of unknown cause detected in Wuhan, China, was the first reported to the WHO country office in China on 31st December 2019. You see what is a coincidence? On 31st December 2019, WHO was officially informed. On 30th January 2020, WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom declared the 2019 novel coronavirus outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. Following a second meeting of the emergency committee convened under the international health regulation, India has reported its first confirmed case of novel coronavirus in Thrissur district of Kerala on 30th January 2020. The patient was a student studying in Wuhan University, China, and had then recently returned to India. Prime Minister announced curfew on 22nd March. And on 14th March, the Union government under the Disaster Management Act 2005 enabled the states to spend a larger part of funds from the State Disaster Response Fund to fight this coronavirus. The Ministry of Home Affairs published the official notification and invoked the lockdown under the Section 6 of the Disaster Management Act. I hope when we will discuss about the impact of the COVID-19, you might have read this Disaster Management Act, Epidemic Disease Act, as well as the ordinance which has amended the Epidemic Disease Act, and of course the provisions of the ICC. I will come to that legal framework and the challenges which we are having before. But this Ministry of Home Affairs public official notification, which invoked the lockdown under Section 6 of the Disaster Management Act, the Home Secretary issued guidelines for this lockdown under his powers in Section 10, Clause 2(1) of the Disaster Management Act, and the chairman of the National Executive Committee constituted under Section Act of this Act. The closet understanding of lockdown can be construed, because we belong to the legal fraternity and we should understand the legality of this lockdown, can be construed from the Epidemic Disease Act 1897, Section 2 and 2A of this act, which gives power to the state and the central government to take necessary steps in the situation of an epidemic to control its outbreak, even if the steps are not mentioned in any law, practice, or theory in the country. In furtherance of these notifications, now you just see our Prime Minister announced, when he announced the first lockdown, the theme was Jaan hai to Jahan hai. And first lockdown was announced from April 25th to 14th April. Second came from 15th to 3rd May. But after 3rd May, the theme changed. From Jaan hai to Jahan hai, Prime Minister said, Jaan bhi aur Jahan bhi. And then 4th May to 17th May, and lockdown 4, 18th May to 31st May. And we all are thinking what will happen after it. I am remembered by the observation of the Ehrlich. You are all members of the legal fraternity. He said, because we are studying the impact of law, he said that the positive law can be effective when it corresponds to the living law. That is when legal codes are based on underlying social norms or real life. In other words, law is to be understood as a part of the social order. Positive law can be effective only if it serves the purpose of the living law. Law is the product of society. Society is not product of law. And when Ross said that the law is the most specialized and highly furnished engine of the social control, it is true, it is a engine of social control, but at the same time, the success of law depends upon the acceptability and the adaptability by the society. And I think you might have remembered the saying, life of law is not logic, but the experience. In that context, I am discussing, because I always say that every university is a great storehouse of learning. It is a great laboratory for the training. It is an instrument of the creation of knowledge, conservation of knowledge, dissemination of knowledge, and above all, it is a center for the creation of the knowledge maker. I congratulate the team and the organizers of this particular webinar. I congratulate the officials of the IILM University who has organized this webinar. And especially, I'm here because of my friend Dr. Anand. He ordered me, and I said, yes, when you are saying we know to each other for more than 35, 40 years, and your order is my command, certainly, because I know it's a thing where we all should contribute, and especially on this particular issue. I think before we discuss the challenges of crime control, it is necessary for us to understand what is the function of the criminal law in a society. Because we all know that all the attempts to define crime failed from Blackstone to Case. None of them was able to define crime properly. And then the efforts were made that let us go for the functional approach. Let us try to understand what are the functions of criminal law, whether the criminal law, because it's a coercive force of the state. It's a power which is used by the state to maintain so many things. So it was in 1959 when the Wolfenden Committee came out with the functional approach of the criminal law. And that we should keep in mind when we are discussing all these things. And in the functional approach, Wolfenden Committee said that there are positive and the negative functions of criminal law. The positive function of the criminal law is to preserve the law and order, which is the most important function of the criminal law, and provide sufficient safeguard against exploitation and corruption of others, particularly those who are young and weak in body or mind, inexperienced, or in a state of physical, official, or economic dependence. They also said that the function of the criminal law is to protect the citizens from what is offensive or injurious. If we see these three functions, then it becomes ample clear that the relationship between the health care and the criminal law is well established. Because in the previous days also, alcoholism, euthanasia, intoxication, HIV, and especially if you see your own Indian Penal Code 269, 270, negligent act which spreads the infections or the disease, or 270, malignant act. So what I want to say that when we discuss about the offenses and the penalties, then we should know, because as far as this lockdown is concerned, I will come to that after I will be covering that what new type of crimes have emerged. Because as far as traditional crimes are concerned, the statistics which is available to us, it clearly indicates that throughout the globe there is a dip in the incidence of crime. There are less killings, there are less gang fights, there are less robberies, dacoities, thefts. However, domestic violence is on the rise, and that's why during this COVID closure or the lockdown, factors that prompt the challenges criminal law, they include, I have just collected there, I have made the 8 categories of them. First category is there is a higher demand of certain goods such as protective gears and the pharmaceutical products. So people are involved in the black market. People are involved in charging the high prices for them. There is a decreased mobility and flow of the people across the country. It is creating a lot of law and order situation. We will discuss about the migrant labor. We will discuss about other things. Third, the citizens remained at home and including teleworking, relying on digital solutions. Again, it is creating a lot of problems in them, anxiety, fear. Limitations of public life will make some criminal activities less visible and displace them to home or online setting. This here I mean, you see, you might have read in the newspaper, there is a rise in the cases of the domestic violence. Even the reports from the National Legal Services Authority as well as Women Commission as Women, they clearly indicate there is a rise. And you see the self-help centers or the call centers, they are telling the different things to us. So these are on the rise. Increased anxiety, fear that may create vulnerability to exploitation. I was just yesterday reading in the newspaper, there are more sale of the sex toys. There are more hits on the pornographic website. There are more such activities which were not there before the lockdown. Decreased supply of certain illicit goods in the country. You see, one new industry emerged during the lockdown 1 and lockdown 2. In lockdown 3, you see some shops were open, but I hope it became a cottage industry when they were supplying the liquor to the needy people at exorbitant prices. And I don't know. Now, after it has been opened, there are some dealers who are registering the opening of the shops because they were earning more when their shops were closed. I think it's for the criminologist, Professor Madhavan, if you are here, on the line, I think our vice president, Indian Society of Criminology is having 6 vice chairmen. They are having 12 executive members and they are spread throughout the country. And you will be happy to know that we are conducting so many research projects in the different parts of the country, and we will be sharing them with you. And we will like you also to become the member of the Indian Society of Criminology so that you can also take part in these activities. So these activities are going on. So criminologists are working on it. And the next is, and which is very important, you all might be thinking for that, cyber attacks are on the rise. Criminals are using the COVID-19 crisis to carry out social engineering attacks. COVID, they want donations, they want some sort of help for the people who are trapped in it, themed around the pandemic to distribute various malware packages. Similarly, fraudsters have been very quick to adapt well-known fraud schemes to capitalize on the anxiety and fears of victims through the crisis. the sale of counterfeit healthcare and the sanitary products, as well as protective equipment and counterfeit pharmaceutical products, have increased manifold since the outbreak of crisis. There is a risk that the counterfeiters will use shortages in the supply of some goods to increasingly provide counterfeit alternatives both online and offline. These are the general challenges. And may I tell you, with full respect to the police, and here at this stage, I would like to salute frontline warriors. I would like to salute our police officers, our doctors, our health workers, our sanitary people, Safai Karamchari, for the services which they have rendered to the country, to the society, and especially before discussing the criminal justice administration, because you know they are the four agencies. Madam Sharma was talking about the courts, but I will say that there are four agencies: police, prosecution, court, and correctional administration. And all the four agencies are very important. And under this lockdown, it is the police which has taken the maximum load. And I'm very happy to see the transformation of the police during this lockdown. One good thing which has happened due to the coronavirus, that is the changing face of the police, the face which is very near to the people by and large, because we saw police dancing, we saw police giving the cake to the old people, we saw the police helping others. Even one lady constable was helping a pregnant, and she delivered a child inside the ambulance. And so everywhere, but at the same time, during the lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, the clippings or the videos which were coming online through social media or through TV, they were indicating that at some time they are asking the people for the sit-up, they are asking for the frog jump, they are killing some people, but nowhere people objected. Everybody appreciated. They were taking the people to the hospital, they were distributing the food, they were helping the needy people. I think after independence, this was the first time when the police showed that human face for which we were asking again and again. And it's a matter of pride and honor for me, because I am a son of a police. I have not seen so many bouquets in my life as I have seen this time, when the people are appreciating, and I appreciate it, and I hope that they will continue. But other side also, they also get tax, they also get criticism because of certain reasons, and we will come to that. As far as this other side is concerned, or the maximum impact of the lockdown is concerned, I think you can say that it is on the prevention of the spread of the coronavirus. Criminal law, when this lockdown was imposed, when the provisions of Epidemic Disease Act, along with the ordinance and the provisions of the Section 188 was invoked, the main purpose was to prevent the disease, to break the chain of the coronavirus. And if you see, for example, this Disaster Management Act 2005, under Section 51A, it provides that whoever obstructs any officer or employee of the central government or the state government or person authorized by the national authority or district authority in the discharge of his function of, or 51B, refuses to comply with any direction given by on behalf of the government. Initially, the cases which were reported by the police, they were under the Section 51A or B of the Disaster Management Act. But you see, the offences under the Disaster Management Act, as per Schedule 1 of the CRPC, are non-cognizable and baseless. Police found it is not serving their purpose. Then, if we go Epidemic Disease Act, initially under the 1897, 1977 Act, Section 3 was there, and which was providing punishment, and it was saying that the action shall be taken according to the Section 188 of the Indian Penal Code. And under Section 188 of the Indian Penal Code, anybody who is disobeying the orders or the orders which have been promulgated by the competent authority, he may be tried for the offense. But the problem was, when you read the Section 188, then you will find that Section 195 of the CRPC provides that magistrate shall not take cognizance of the offense under 188 until the complaint has been filed by a public servant. And because of that, as far as the law is concerned, police is not, I think, what Vikram Singh alleged recently on 5th May, one PIL was filed before the Supreme Court. And the Vikram Singh said that lot of arrests have been made, because you know how many persons have been arrested under Section 188 so far. And they have been arrested when the Section 188 clearly bars the filing of the FIR, and if the FIR cannot be filed, though the offense is cognizable, in some state it is bailable, in some state it is non-bailable, but arrest can it be made? And that is I think, Yaksh Prashna. And Vikram Singh went before the Supreme Court, and I will tell you the case law on this point, because this is very interesting point which I want to share with all the students of the law. I want to share with all the professional practitioners as well as policymakers, because we should try to remove the confusion. Because under the Section 188, Andhra Pradesh, there are more than 17,000 people who are in jail. In Tamil Nadu, more than 450,000 persons are in jail. In Uttar Pradesh, more than 40,000 people are in jail, and they are in jail when FIR cannot be recorded by the police officer. If you will read Section 188 and 195, because the court will not take cognizance. And when this matter was brought before the court, then you see lot of cases emerge, and these cases I tried to find out. The first case which came before, there were the issues which came before the court, but before, so I am first discussing the cases which came before the Supreme Court. Before Supreme Court, the state of Punjab versus Raj Singh and others, this was decided in 1998. The Supreme Court, in this case, when the state in this case appealed against the questioning of FIR by the High Court, state appealed against the questioning of FIR by the High Court. The Supreme Court held that the provision under Section 195 of CRPC does not deter or prevent the police from filing FIR and investigate. The court further held that Section 195 does not control the statutory power of the police in this matter. I think this judgment can satisfy the people who always say that the police can register the FIR. Again, one case came in 2003, M. Narayan Das of the state of Karnataka and others, in which the Supreme Court held that the power of police to register FIR and carry investigation is not controlled by provisions of the Section 195. However, the court cannot take cognizance based upon such FIR and investigation in absence of a complaint as contemplated. Third case came very recently, and it is Central Bureau of Education versus M. Sivamani. It was held by, while bar against cognizance of specified offense is mandatory, the same has to be understood in the context of the purpose for which the bar is created. The bar is not intended to take away remedy against a crime, but only to protect an innocent person against false or frivolous proceedings by a private person. So, as far as Supreme Court is concerned, I think they appear to be very clear that there is a distinction between the taking the cognizance and registering an FIR and conducting an investigation. And they are saying that because of Section 195, there can't be put any bar. But when it comes to High Court, even today, in Tamil Nadu, in Bihar, in the court said that filing an FIR is void ab initio. In Jeevan Kumar versus State of Punjab 2008, the High Court said the division bench of the court, relying on Jagtar Singh versus Chandigarh, held that the proceedings under Section 188 IPC can only be initiated by a public servant through a written complaint before the court. This creates a bar on the police to register FIR for such offense, and therefore no FIR can be registered. I will advise you to read more High Court judgments, and they are divided in their opinion. But my concern is, why 5 lakh people are in jail in Tamil Nadu? Why more than 50,000 people are jailed in Uttar Pradesh? They are there for flouting the orders. They are there, and why police has arrested? Are they working against the people? No. Because sometimes situation demands. I had a discussion with many police officers, and you will be happy to know that soon I am going to organize an interaction between the judges, police officers, and the university researchers, so that we can discuss the issue. And Honorable Chief Justice of the Madhya Pradesh High Court has kindly consented to organize such type of interaction. And I am also looking forward, because after reading so much that all the vice chancellors and the health department should think that why don't we start a special specialization of the court under the criminal law related with the issues, because there are a lot of issues which are involved with the migrant workers. Because yesterday the suo motu action which was taken by the Supreme Court, you tell me one thing, so many workers are coming out from their houses, they are assembling at one place. Are they not flouting the rules? Are they not flouting the orders? And they are violating the criminal law. Are they criminals? I am sorry to say, yesterday when I was having a discussion with Professor B.B. Pandey, and somehow or other, I just mentioned that these laborers who are coming out and to those who are migrating, they are creating a very difficult situation for the whole country, because they may be the COVID virus carrier, and they will take this disease to the distant places where it was not there. And for our country, it will become difficult to manage, because we are having poor healthcare services in rural areas. There are no doctors, there are no nurses. And when I said criminal, the Professor Pandey became upset. He shouted on me, and I apologized, because I heard his sentiments yesterday, where he told me, Balraj, they are the maker of India. They are the people who have given their blood. They are people who have given their life for factories. And then he discussed that in Dharavi, there are more than 10 lakh 50,000 people are there. There are 5,000 factories. And you know how much production was done by these cottage industries, how much money was generated there, economic activity. They are after all economic activities and your criminal law. So, as a student of criminal law, I think, and students who are attending this particular webinar, and the criminologists who are attending this webinar, sir, the biggest challenge before the criminal law is how to preserve the order. Because the purpose of criminal law is, number one, to protect a person from the harm caused by the others. Number two, to protect a person from the harm caused by oneself. And number three, to protect the societal morals. And I think if you apply, because this legislative framework which we are having to control the crimes related with the COVID-19, this is one view, because whether it is the Epidemic Disease Act, whether it is Indian Penal Code, whether it is the Disaster Management Act, this is one thing that we are just trying to spread, we are trying to prevent, but what next? Because when I went through the courts of the different countries, you see, USA, Australia, Singapore, China, they are having very strict legislation, and they are not having this problem of migrant laborers like us as we are having in our country. Knowing fully well what will happen, we are allowing. And yesterday, when initially Supreme Court registered, they dismissed the writ petition, but now yesterday they have directed that provide them food, because the fight is between life and the livelihood. The fight, they are, I don't know how the state machinery, whether it is the labor department, social welfare department, which urged, how they became so restless. They are not believing anybody now. So the time has come, because I apologize to Professor Pandey, sir. You forced me to think about them with fresh energy, because I was thinking that why the police is not taking them into custody, why the police is allowing them to march on foot or by some other means. If they are having money to pay 3,000 rupees, 4,000 rupees to the transporters, why they can't stay the place where they were staying? So and we are having the law, but again there is one more things which are there. I'm asking you one question. Before 24th March, when notification was not made, but the advisories were issued that anybody who is coming from the foreign, they should go for the quarantine, and they should inform their details to the concerned health officials. And if they are not informing, are they criminal? Have they committed any offense? I think we all will debate and discuss, because a case which came on March 15, a 18-year-old Calcutta patient of COVID-19, the son of a top bureaucrat in West Bengal, has reportedly flouted norms on returning home from UK. He was admitted in the hospital, but no action was taken against him under criminal law. I don't know how there are lakhs of people languishing in jail. Similarly, there are issues, and I am sharing some you see cases with you, or you can say hypothetical situations with you, because one case happened. One person who was in jail at Indore, he was tested positive, and then he was shifted to Bhopal jail. He was shifted to Jabalpur jail for treatment, as well as in the medical. He was admitted in the medical college, and from medical college he escaped. And after 2-3 days, when he was approaching towards Indore, he was arrested by the police. And you know, the police officer who arrested him, he got infected, and during his journey, he infected many other persons. Some of them were detected, some of them were tested positive. So here the question is, that person is undergoing the punishment already. What offense he has committed, and what more action can be taken against him? If it is done by somebody else, a person knowing fully well, because I was reading in newspaper 3 days before, one truck driver was tested positive. One truck driver gave his sample for the testing, and the health official collected his sample from his house. And after 3-4 days, when they came to know that he is positive, and they went to his house to take him to the hospital, they found that he has already left for some other place like Bombay. His wife told that he has gone to deliver the goods. What offense he has committed? And if these persons are spreading corona, if they are infecting some old person who ultimately died, if they are spreading this infection to somebody who is admitted in the hospital, what offense they have committed? More and more, you see, in Australia, such type of persons are tried for the culpable homicide, not wanting to murder, manslaughter. What they say? They said that they, and if the person died afterwards because of it, they are tried for the murder. Here in our country, I think it's a big challenge. I've been told yesterday, Dr. Pandey was telling me that in Uttar Pradesh, one ordinance has been issued. And in Uttar Pradesh ordinance, this particular thing has been taken care of. And now, if anybody is spreading this virus knowingly, fully well, and some other persons are infected, and if somebody died, then he will be guilty for murder. And if somebody alive continue, then he will be tried for the culpable homicide, not amounting to murder. Similarly, when we see the incidents of the attacks on the doctors, of course, amendment in the Epidemic Disease Act has made, you see, things very clear that now all the persons who are attacking doctor, healthcare workers, or damaging any property, showing any violence, they will be tried and they will be prosecuted, and the punishment is there, and the burden of proof also on them because they will have to. It's okay, but the question is trust and trust deficit part. The question is it this crime control? Which agency is involved in this crime control? You will say police. Police is the main agency for the crime control. And do they understand such type of consequences, complications? Do they understand? Because when the courts are saying that why this complaint was necessary by a public official, I think they wanted to protect the individual rights, individual liberty. They one of the principles on which the whole criminal law is standing, that is nobody should under Article 21, no person shall be deprived of the life and liberty without the procedure established by law. That is of paramount importance. So I think time is coming when the people who are criminologists, who are the practitioners, who are sociologists, who are psychologists, they all have to sit together. They have to think again and again. They have to find out the reasons and the solutions so that we can provide a good answer. This challenge of crime control is not an easy challenge. It's a new situation. There is a need for the pragmatic solutions, and especially when we are living with the, you see, crowd of the migrant laborers who are going back, reverse migration, and at this time they are not listening to anything. And you tell me, once they go back, you see quarantine facilities, healthcare facilities, their medical checkup, and if they are positive, then post activities, are they easy things? We need some more community workers. We need some more people. I don't think any state will be able to provide that much force as health worker, or so we should think over it also, how the human resource should be utilized properly. The students who are listening to me, please, you can understand, because I want to discuss so many other things also, the guidelines of the Supreme Court regarding the prisoners, But one more important thing I would like to discuss, Dr. Sharma, and that is related to section 167 of the CRC. It is a very important point for the practitioners because 167 CRPC talks about the default. There is a mandatory requirement that in cases where the punishment is less than 10 years, the charge sheet should have been filed within 60 days, and where the punishment is death sentence, life imprisonment, or more than 10 years, then the charge sheet may be filed in 90. What happened during this lockdown period? Investigation officers failed to submit charge sheet within the stipulated time. The matter came before the court because those accused applied for the bail. Everybody wants to be released, and it's a bail which is popularly known as a default bail. In most of the cases, court always provides them bail. But now it was an extraordinary situation. Then again, some court said no, we will not release the prisoners on bail. We will not grant the bail to the accused. Even the report, because they should be given more time because
Dr.
in some
Chopra,
cases
we have less than 15 minutes now and quite a few questions.
So in this situation, again, I am asking you, you see the judgments of the High Court of Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, and what directions have been issued. And again, prisoners, how they should be released. So I just wanted to tell you, this topic is not a easy topic to cover within an hour. It can take hours and hours, discussions. But one thing I have learned from Professor Pandey yesterday, we are living in a country of the Buddha and the Gandhi. We are living in the country of the Vivekanand. And all our thought must start with the understanding of the poor. We should think for have-nots first, because in this situation, they are the worst sufferers. And that's why, whether it is police, it is courts, because for the first time, courts are under the lockdown. They are having their functions through video conferencing. And what Dr. Sharma was saying, that's correct. But even then, they are working very well. They are the source of the dispensation of justice. And we are lucky to have such type of independence of judicial system in our country. And really, I will say that I'm looking forward for your questions, if any. But it is a wonderful opportunity which was given to me by IIL University. I am thankful to Professor Anand, Professor Ila Sharma, and other faculty members to allow me to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We have all approximately 10 minutes left, and we have at least 10 questions. So,
Okay.
yes. So I'll start with the first question. Many of the questions are similar in nature. So I will combine them and mention the people who have put up the questions. The first question, sir, you will have to answer very briefly because we have quite a few and you must answer within 1 minute. And most of the questions are actually answered also to some extent. And like you said, yes, sir, we cannot finish the whole topic in 1 hour or so. So we look forward to having you again, if you agree kindly, for our part 2 of this continuation of this dialogue. Now I'll put to you the first question that was by Praveen Kumar Sharma. He is asking. Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here. Please.
Asking there is an urgent need to bring about some drastic changes in our criminal justice system now that biological warfare is a reality. And adding to the same question, sir, Professor Deepak Anand is asking that bioterrorism and food terrorism may be the next challenge for criminal justice system. Are we ready to deal with that effectively? This is the first question. I have combined 2 questions. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Both are my friends, Lieutenant General P.N. Sharma and Dr. Anand. And they have asked the questions. I think they know the answer. You see, these type of situations, then they come, we want to respond through criminal. Why the people are after the China? That tell us what happened in that lab, how this virus came out, and who is responsible for that. So let's start thinking, start preparing. And Dr. Anand, I know you will answer it well than me. Whether it is bioterrorism, of course, we are prepared for the bioterrorism. We are prepared for the war. I think Dr. Lieutenant General Sharma, he is from the army and he understands more about this warfare. But when it comes to public life, how we are going to respond? And you know, now the advisories which have been issued, social distancing, cleaning, every time putting mask, such type of directions you will have if something, these things will happen in life. Thank you very much. Next question.
So the next question is by Sachi Paudal. And a similar question, she asked, is there a need to officially separate the investigation and public order functions of Indian police? And there's another question that is to do with police. Usha Tiwari, she asked that police indoor training regarding crime control and prevention needs to be restructured and accountability mechanisms are also Do you agree? Do you agree? So
Dr.
the first
Sharma,
question, is there a need to officially separate the investigation and public order functions of Indian police? And the second one is accountability to the community.
I think I am in favor. I am in favor of separating because the courts have said again and again, investigation police must be separated from the law and order. So I hope that state will take cognizance of this particular direction given by the court, and as it is better as early.
And so there are other questions. One is to do with migrant. So Priya Mittal, she's asking, sir, how far justified is it to label the laborers who work in our country and for our country as migrants? Isn't it against that? Aren't we violating their dignity?
I think it is both ways. I tell you, when I was thinking and working on the issue of the migrant labor, I was thinking when they are flouting the orders issued by the government, whether they can be prosecuted. And the Professor Pandey scolded me. Balraj, are you fool? They also want to live with dignity. Their landlord is not allowing them to stay in the house where they were living. They are dependent on the food supplied by the municipal corporation or by some other charitable organization. They are not able to meet out the minimum basic needs of their children. If they will not go, the only hope is the little amount of money which they are having, and they think that with this money they will be able to reach their home. If they will lose this money, then who will come for their rescue? Right. And when they are leaving, not one, not two, not 100, number is in thousands, lakhs. I was reading the statement of Chief Minister Uttar Pradesh. More than 10 lakhs laborers have come back. More than 25 lakhs of the laborers have come back and 10 lakhs are yet to come. Similarly, the figure is in lakhs, whether it is Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Bihar, West Bengal. Why they are coming back? They are coming back for the sake of adventure? No. They are going back because they want to live with dignity. They are feeling, and I agree, but one thing which is very alarming, and that is what will happen in the rural area if they will carry this virus with them. if they will go without medical screening, if they will not go for quarantine, if they will not observe the directions, if they will fail to come up to the expectations, if they will hide. So a lot of, you see, education is required for them. I think we all should come forward, and I don't know what appeal I should make to my students, because we are asking them to stay home, stay at home, and these migrant workers are on the road.
Right.
Who will tell them? I think the police officers, social welfare officers, labor officers, they should tell them. And media person. Media is not playing its role what they should have played. Whether there were fake news, where there was something else. So I think I agree with her. So we have to protect their right to dignity and do what we can do.
Sir, I'll have to ask you another question. This is by Ekantik Dalal. He's asking, domestic violence cases in rural areas of India are relatively more than in the urban areas. What options do women in rural areas have to protect themselves from domestic violence?
Can he satisfy me on the basis of the statistics? I think he's wrong.
Or in rural areas or in urban areas?
Cases of domestic violence are more in urban areas.
Do women have any of the areas to protect themselves from domestic violence?
Even in rural area, urban area, there are some centers under the Act. You see, Domestic Violence Act, a particular mechanism has been provided, and one can follow that mechanism. And even
he's more concerned about the lockdown situation.
Pardon?
He is concerned about the lockdown situation, sir. How do the women access that system, that process?
Nowadays, everything is going online. I think most of the people in village, they are connected through mobile, through internet, and all the activities are going on there. Because the money transfer, you see, Jan Dhan Yojana has digitalized India. All the poor persons are getting their money through mobile message. I went to a village, most of the people were carrying. So the poor people are the first to have the mobile. So ask her that please do survey. Don't first make the survey, try to understand the real situation, and then work on it. Help
sir,
can be taken.
I'll go to another question, sir. We have quite a few more. This is by Vineet Tiwari. He's asking releasing of prisoners in COVID-19 situation who are waiting for trials, saying that prisons are overcrowded. Does this not reveal the poor working of court and trial system of our country?
In fact, I am feeling concerned about that also. And as far as Supreme Court is concerned, they have given a lot of guidelines.
And sir, another question. Sorry, sir. Yeah.
No. I was just looking for the guidelines because
Anyways, there are. Another question is by Anuradha Yadav. She's asking, what are the data privacy concerns and protection, especially during the lockdown? Is there any new policy regarding data privacy?
I think we are not having any data protection act so far. But right to privacy has been declared to be a fundamental right, so people are aware. But no regulatory mechanism has been put in place. So I think this is one area where a lot of work is required to be done. And I admit that as far as this part is concerned, I'm not well versed. So I can already tell that Data Protection Act we are not having. And of course, she has to find out herself from any expert what is the latest position.
I think her concern comes from all the contact tracing and the Arogya Setu app, which are very necessary at this stage. But which
Arogya Setu app is different.
no, the app. The app.
App, na? Ha.
So it is necessary to control the pandemic, but then there are concerns of data privacy again.
So discussions are on. Discussions are on that, and I'm not. I think I'm not an expert to just clarify the situation. But I have downloaded that app in my mobile.
Like you said, that law is product of society. So as and when situations arise, that is when we start legislating, we start thinking and putting down guidelines. So this was a situation which nobody thought that we will have, these apps, contact tracing and everything. So there will certainly be concerns and they will be addressed. Right, sir? Sir, there are a few more questions.
Dr. Sharma, here I will say that there are two orders. One, you say it's a legal order, which consists of the constitution, acts, regulation, ordinances. Another is social order, which consists of customs, traditions, folkwares. And you see, the social order and the legal order, when the legal order is consonant with the social order, everything goes there. But when the legal order comes in conflict with the social order, or when you try to transform or change the social order through law, some conflict starts. And nowadays we talk in terms of the social transformation of society through law. Though law is the product of society, but law is also used for the social engineering,
right,
depending upon the goals what we want to achieve. And that's why everything must be judged in that context. Yes, ma'am. Next question.
Sir, we will take one more question. It is by Pankaj Jain. He's asking, can you see any change in criminal laws regarding 60-90 days concept of charge sheet not filed or investigation not completed within said period during COVID time?
No, this is not the change in the jurisprudence. You see, these are the extraordinary situations. And now we can debate statutory rights, whether they can be respected or some sort of relaxation may be given. Because these are the days when a person has been released on bail, but he is not getting the sureties because of the lockdown. He is in jail. Sureties can't reach, they cannot execute bond. Similarly, police officer, he is busy with the duty. Investigation officer who has been caught by the disease, he's undergoing the treatment. So many situations are there. So I think this period has provided us a lot of learning. And I hope that policymaker will take the advantage of the lessons what they are getting nowadays in shaping, reshaping the policies. And of course, law may be amended as the Epidemic Disease Act has been amended through ordinance. And I hope that for the first time, these provisions have been added. In future, we will be having those changes.
More questions have come in. I'll try to combine similar questions. One is by Ajay Kushwaha and Mansi Sharma. They are asking what are the terms and conditions regarding cybercrime and social engineering in COVID-19, and during pandemic.
Tell them we will organize separate session on it. This cannot be answered.
Another question is by Mansi Sharma.
Professor Sharma, please organize another session.
I think we
cyber crime, cyber security.
Do that. Yeah.
See,
because
these are. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Criminal justice delivery system is a great concern to everybody at this point.
I know.
So there are quite a few more questions. Maybe we can record it later, or can you please reply in very, brief, short sentences?
If you have time, I don't mind. If you have time, I don't mind.
I think there are just 3-4 more questions. One question is Pranamika, by Pranamika Saikia. She's asking prisoner like rapist under POSCO, where the victim happens to be his own daughter. Is that an efficient decision? I'll say them together and you can answer them together, sir. This is about rapist under POSCO. And is the problem of stranded migrants, has this challenged the federal form of Indian government? Now, this is totally different. And sir, according to, this is by Satyendra Kumar, and Ritu Agrawal is asking, according to you, what is the best solution to the problem of migrant laborers? So, sir, just ये एक तो rape वाला sir, and then migrant laborers.
As far as the question of punishment for a rapist under the POSCO is concerned, I think now the things are well defined. If it is proved and he happens to be the father, I think that death sentence is the only punishment which will be awarded to him. Next question regarding the migrant labor. Dr. Ritu Agrawal and others who are asking this particular question, I will only say, it's not an easy answer. I was just reading the newspaper today, and the Chief Minister of the Uttar Pradesh was telling that we will make arrangements for the employment, for the social security, for the economic city, by providing them more what we were doing before. And for that particular purpose, lot of schemes, and he has announced the formation of a labor commission in Uttar Pradesh for these to look after these problems. So I can only say let's pray that the government will work seriously, sincerely for the welfare of these migrant workers. There is no doubt they are in need of support. There is no doubt that they are in need of some sort of compassion in many ways. And sociologists like Dr. Ritu Agrawal should think more about it, because we students of law or the framers of law, you see, when we enacted Section 188, anybody who is flouting the order shall be prosecuted. Okay, they are flouting the order. They have left the place. They should be arrested. They should be. But is that the answer? No. They are the citizens of the country. Instead of looking to the reasons which force them to leave the place, instead of looking the issues and the problems which force them to walk 1,000 kilometers on foot, they are taking all the things. They just want to reach home. Why? After 70 years of independence, we failed to provide them even basic things. Thanks to Professor Pandey. Again, I am telling, because yesterday was a very hard week. Because the moment I said, prosecutor, he said, you have hurt me. You don't know what they are. Try to understand their problem. Have you seen that video in the TV where a mother was carrying her daughter who was sleeping on the suitcase, and she was dragging that suitcase? Right. So migrant labor, of course, these are the not easy answers, not the small answer, and even you see, all the state heads, chiefs are not able to answer. So let us discuss, and we should sit together, go for the brainstorm.
And we continue the discourse, sir. The government needs to save lives, but criminal justice delivery system also has to run its own course. So crimes must be addressed. I'm concluding, sir.
I will only say that during this COVID-19 period, all the functionaries of the criminal justice have shown tremendous potential, whether it is police, whether it is prosecution, judiciary, or the correctional administration. We can't say anything to them. If some defect is there, that is in the policy. And the policymaker have to think again and again. And once again, I salute frontline warriors. I thank you and your organization for providing me this wonderful opportunity to interact with a lot of people. So can I say thank you and goodbye?
Just a minute, sir. Let me conclude.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this extremely enlightening discourse. We must continue this debate, and it was extremely candid when you talked about your approach first and how Mr. Pandey spoke about migrant laborers, and then the question that whether those flouting COVID rules, they're arrested by police, of course, but are they criminals? Now this is a major question. and like I said, the government needs to survive, but criminal justice delivery system also has to run its course. We cannot blame those who are in the front line, those who are executing orders, those who are implementing rule of law or COVID rules. But then we must also think of people who, like rape victims or sexual violence victims, domestic violence victims. How do they access to justice? So this needs to be discussed more during the pandemic times, because during the pandemic times, sir, all the criminals who were running around, ठीक है, बाहर वाले crimes कम हो गए, they have not become saints overnight. So crimes are taking place inside, homes or inside neighborhoods, which were always hush-hush. Those crimes are taking place, and these people need access to justice. So next part, maybe we can discuss that more. But this time we did discuss migrant labor, all the ethical issues, that migrant laborers are there. They are violating COVID rules, but they must live with dignity and all. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. It was extremely, extremely enlightening for me also. And thank you very much for participation to all the
My regards to Professor Anand also. Thank you.
Sir, we will definitely do a part 2.